perseverance and a lot of hard work can get you there. For me, being able to provide for my people and take care of those employees and see that growth for them is just huge. And I wouldn't really trade it for the world. So I really appreciate, having me on, and everything you're doing for business finance. Opening so many eyes on that front is huge. So really appreciate it.
Welcome to the Roll Up and Roll Out podcast. Sit down with blue-collar business owners and inspired entrepreneurs to get the industry insights from the leaders that grow our local communities and learn how to scale your business. Regardless of GED, these people know how to GSD. Here is your host, Paul Childers. Let's get to work.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Roll Up and Roll Out. My name is Paul Childers. I am a host. This podcast features business owners that may or may not have their GED, but every single one of them knows how to GSD and get shit done. Today, we've got Chris Tiffany, owner of Sprinter Business Solutions, on. Chris, thank you so much for taking time out today. Quickly, just introduce yourself and your business for us.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I'm Chris, and thanks again for having me on here, Paul. I own a company, Sprinter Business Solutions. We are headquartered up in Wausau, Wisconsin. We've got kind of two main divisions. We've got a managed service provider and telecom division that does mid-size and smaller business IT all over the Midwest. And then we've got a low voltage and physical security division that is much more of kind of the construction side, the dirty side of technology, all the drilling and conduiting and bending and construction end. We do work with customers all over the lower 48 states on that side of things. So.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. Before we started recording here, we were kind of talking about what got you into business. I'm going to have you go back through that a little bit just because I found it interesting at how young you were when you started this. So can you just, kind of read back to
Absolutely.
What got you into it?
Right. Absolutely. So quick little background on myself, second oldest of six kids, homeschooled K through 12, allowed me to graduate high school a couple years early, took the old ACT and did well enough. So moved into college. I started college at the local UW Marathon County. And a couple days after I turned 18, I had been working on, classmates, professors, stuff like that, computers, technology. Never actually had a computer till I was 14 because my parents were against technology. So, laughing on them 15 years later here, but it pays their bills. But decided, hey, you know what? If I'm going to do this as a kind of a side hustle, a thing, I might as well do it right. So a couple days after I turned 18, March 31st, filed the DBA, I went to my local State Farm insurance agent, got, standard general liability insurance and started from there. So pretty quickly picked up some contracts with IBM, Infoprint. Kind of the subcontracting world was very early on back then. And, picked up some local customers, a couple that are still with me today, 15 years later, Country Fresh Meats and a couple of other ones. And kind of the rest is history to a certain extent,
Yeah. Walk me through some of the phases. Obviously starting a business at 18, most of us at that time frame were just getting into our early college careers, and some of us just getting into our early careers. What hurdles and what kind of evolution did you go through from thinking about business as an 18-year-old to now being, they're probably right around 32, 33, right? Like what the evolution of your business over that 15 years?
Definitely. So it's seen a few things, So I knew pretty early on that I grew up I was blessed enough. My dad owned a small trucking company, one trucking company, so self-employed. Grew up with a lot of other folks self-employed, so I wasn't afraid to jump into that. So going out on my own, hanging that shingle, if you will, was fairly natural to me. But I also knew from growing up in that I did not want to just be self-employed. Everyone I knew, they couldn't go on vacations. If they did, they stopped making money. It just didn't work. So I knew from early on that I wanted to build a business rather than just be self-employed. And that's no shame on the self-employed guys out there, but that's just where I knew I wanted to go. So I hired my first employee, I think like 9-10 months in, something like that. Got little tiny offices because Lord knows I did not want to run. I got an office before I moved out of my parents' house. Like, so little 2 room, 100 square foot for $250, all utilities included. And slept in that office for many a night because it was closer to my college. So kind of started in that realm. I'll be honest, starting as an 18-year-old kid, it was real hard to get much for business B2B work. Because who's going to trust the 18-year-old kid again? Had a few businesses my family knew that I was able to come in and help. But I was able to do a lot in more of the subcontract world because when you're looking at somebody on the other end of a screen, nobody knows who it is. They don't really care. Your age isn't listed. It's your reviews. It's your work history. So back in the day, there was a platform called OnForce, and now it's Work Market and Field Nation, and kind of a subcontractor platform in the field services world. And so I was able to kind of grow in that a bit. But a couple of the key things that I did when I started out that kind of helped lead to success were I had other friends that started like computer repair businesses, and they all started at that like $45 an hour in 2009, and that was real good money. They made good money. They stayed super busy. I looked at that and said, I'll never be able to hire an employee at $45 an hour. Like that won't work. So back in '09 when I started at $65 an hour and 65 cents a mile on travel, and that allowed me to kind of take that mindset always of looking at where we're at today, what I need today, and going, okay, but that's not where I want to be tomorrow. So I have to start with and build with where I want to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So kind of, always trying to price one step ahead, engineer, plan one step ahead at least. Now we plan and step a little more than one step ahead, but
The employees are all imagine that's the necessary.
Exactly. So kind of the iterations or the worlds of the business, had that first office, we added on retail, eventually, kind of saw more success early on in the retail side of things. So I had cell phone and computer repair stores. We expanded out to at one point I had 4 stores and then was partner on a couple more stores, more so aimed in that residential or walk-in retail market. So we were dealers for a place called Airfire Mobile, which was kind of a prepaid cellular back when prepaid cellular was like not really as popular as it is now. And they were owned by TDS, US Cellular eventually. Closed out of that, went through those iterations, and up until about 3 years ago, so about 10 years, I had retail stores across Wisconsin and, saw various levels of success in that. I made the classic mistakes of thinking that, growing would fix cash flow challenges, and to an extent it does because it spreads those overhead costs across multiple income streams. But at the end of the day, growth didn't fix cash flow challenges that especially you have in a retail and growing. So I grew that side of things to an extent, and then a few years back, I sold out and closed any of my remaining stores and sold one off to one of the managers, and that worked out well. That game is really early on, you kind of got to decide or look at what businesses you get into and decide whether or not they're good for owner or operating, or if they're good for building a team to run. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, a lot of the cellular and retail type stores work really well if they're owner operated. You can make good money the minute you have to put multiple layers of management, et cetera, in, the profits just go away. And it really hit a point for me was when I look at my managers, I looked at my team and said, okay, you're top in the retail game. You might be able to take home 60K this year. It's again, Wisconsin, small market. And then move over to my commercial side. And it's like, okay, you start at 60K and go up from there. How do you tell somebody that, hey, you know what, you're worth 30 grand less a year because you're dealing with this sector of clients versus this sector? And it's not like we're overcharging in one or another. It's just where the competition is, where the market is, what products you're selling. If your average sale is $150 versus your average sale being $15,000, it's a whole different world. So I don't regret being in the retail end. It helped me grow a lot. But some of the other challenges and lessons I learned in that was, at one point we had a few staff members quit, and not for any like egregious reasons or anything else. It's just, they moved on.
Yep.
And that allowed me, I didn't have enough staffing to keep the 2 stores I had open at the same time. So it put me into a massive cash flow crunch because if you're not open, you're not making money. And so at one point we were about 25 grand behind in rent to the one landlord, which sounds like a lot, but really that was only like 3 months or whatever of behind in arrears. That also caused me to fall behind in my tax payments and whatnot. And so we ended up between federal and state about $250,000 in the hole between sales tax, employee withholdings, just taxes in general, which again, it seems like this huge number. It was really only like 90 grand in actual principal.
Yeah.
But by the time they had fees and all that, and part of it was my own issue, part of it was we went with a local accounting firm that was cheap, and 60 bucks an hour for an accountant sounds great until they don't file your forms and they're like, oh yeah, that's taken care of, and it's not taken care of.
That
Yeah.
is such a redundant issue that I run into. And if there's a lot of really, really good advice on this that you're already saying, and I don't want to interrupt you, but the CPA thing, I can't be any more stressful and stress on this point as business owners. Pay decent money to have somebody manage your books, and then pay even better money to have somebody file your taxes. Even better if you can get somebody that is an actual tax prepper and strategist, so that you're planning and strategizing throughout the year versus trying to react a year later to something that you no longer have any control over.
Amen.
The CPAs aren't all created equal. I mean, that is just a fact. They are not all created equal. Just because they all have a CPA in their name does not mean that they understand business, how business taxes work, and how businesses themselves work. And you can get burned really fast with a bad CPA.
Oh yeah, and we got burned bad. And one of the things I'll say is that if your CPA firm is too busy to get things done during tax season, it means they're the wrong firm. Like, I highly recommend it's the same thing honestly with IT companies and a lot of other ones. Again, no shade against the solopreneurs, whatever. But if you're a growing business and you've got employees and you're trusting your $1 million, $5 million, $10 million a year company with a accounting firm that has 2 or 3 people in it, and they don't have enough staff to even stay on top of your books during tax season, they're not well set up to be able to handle you and make sure that everything is being done right. And we moved from a $60 an hour accounting firm that did shit to a $180 accounting firm that actually cost us less because you know what? Instead of taking 4 hours to file something, they took 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it was probably one of the single largest lessons over the last 15 years was that same thing I'll tell my customers, cheaper does not equal better. And the small firm that's like, oh, it's great to have it go out and have a beer with them or do this or do that was not who had my back. And ultimately we can't even go after that firm because they're out of business and they had not enough assets to even go after. So that was really kind of a critical aspect of growth because really what it did is it handcuffed us then for any growth. I mean, it wasn't until probably 4 years, 3 years ago that I was actually even able to get any line of credits because, nobody's going to give you a line of credit if you have 50 grand you owe to the feds.
Yeah, it makes it hard.
You're in that business, like it's not impossible, but it's very difficult. And so, it essentially when they came a knocking, I straight up told my local IRS agent guy, I was like, look, the only way I'm going to write you a check for 110 grand is if I have a company that's big enough that can write a check for 110 grand. They pushed hard trying to go on payment plans on this, on that. And it was like, I can't commit to 6 grand a month when I don't know where my cash flow's at. And so it made a very stressful couple of years because I had to be able to grow my commercial division, especially to the point that I can write 5 and 6 figure checks to be able to write those checks out.
And what people don't realize too is when the IRS, when they when they do these agreements with businesses, they will put a lien on you personally, but they're also going to put it on your business.
Yep.
But when you're trying to do B2B or commercial stuff, what a lot of people don't take into consideration is that a lot of B2B, like bigger B2B businesses, it doesn't really happen in like the really small B2B world, but like when you start working with like 50 million and up a year companies, they pull everything they can
Oh yeah.
before they go into a contract with you. And that is also your business credit report. which when you have a nice, large IRS claim leaned against it, I'm guessing you found that that makes it sometimes difficult to land a contract with that also being on there.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, I guess we probably didn't deal with too much being like rejected because of it, but our biggest issue was it hamstringed our cash flow to such an extent because we weren't able to do it. So, I mean, kind of,
Manage the
you
bigger.
know, right, the growth restriction was probably the biggest issue, and just, it meant every single vehicle I bought for my fleet, till pretty recently, we paid cash for, and so, when you got, at one point during, like, even early COVID stuff, I mean, I think we added, like, 10 or 12 trucks, as I added $1.2 million in equipment to my fleet in cash that year.
Oof.
That kills cash flow and everything because you can't amortize that out.
No.
Uh and then, of course, it shows then that, like, oh, your company took a big old loss on the year. So, like, it's all these spiraling things. So, first of all, don't get behind in your taxes.
You for a good
You look back on it, I also go, like, if I could go back and redo it, sure, I wouldn't do that. But at the same time, like, at the time, it's also what allowed me to keep the doors open. So the alternative would have probably been to go bankrupt because I had personal liens or personal guarantees on my leases. I would have had to probably go bankrupt to close those leases and close those buildings out and close the business up. And so essentially, it was a very expensive loan from the government, is what it was. Um, so even looking back, I'm like, I'm not sure, could have I gotten things? I didn't have family money. I didn't have investors. I didn't have anything like that. Like many probably listening to this, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. So, if I could do it over again, I would love to not be in that situation, but also that situation taught a lot of lessons and got me to where I am today. And so I think it's important sometimes to look back on those things and realize that, you go through what you go through, and it's about how you persevere and how you make it to the next level and make sure those things don't happen again. So lucky enough, we don't have that issue anymore. So
Yeah. A guy in one of my entrepreneur groups that a lot of us look up to. He's super intelligent, runs some successful businesses. His name is Jacob Stoller. And one thing that he says is that he goes, education costs money. And he's like,
yep,
either pay for it up front by hiring an expert or a coach or a mentor or a good CPA firm or a good whatever, right? Or you pay for it on the back end by the mistakes that were made that cost you money. You don't get an education for free at any point in your business. You either pay for it up front and hope that it prevents a larger mistake, or you pay for it from that mistake and hope you survive to stay around to learn from it and grow from it. So that 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 seems to stay true all the time. Like you can either pay to mitigate it or you can pay afterwards because you thought you could get by for cheap.
right, right. And been there for sure. And that's the same thing we sell a lot of our customers. We deal with a lot of customers that want the cheapest security options or whatever else. And they're like, oh, well, I can go and buy this, Ring camera system or whatever for my apartment complex. But then, when it comes down to it, next thing you know, a year or 2 years in, we're tearing it out and putting a proper system in that allows us to have correct monitoring and integrations and tie into the gates and tie into talk downs and alerts on if the wrong license plates are in the lot, and like it turns into an ecosystem where sure they saw the difference between that $200 camera and a $900 camera and about fell off their chair until they realize what it actually does for the business. And next thing you know, 2 years down the road, we're tearing out that $200 thing and putting the $900 or now $1,100 thing in. And it's the difference between understanding where you are and where you want to go and planning for it, or just kind of making those decisions as they come up and not, just looking at your easy way out. And the easy way out is rarely the, correct long-term play, in business.
You either do it, and I think that's in life too.
Yeah.
It's either you can do it hard right now to make it easier later on, or you can continue to make it and do it the easy way, only for it to become harder later on, right? So, that's another tip of advice for anybody that works in any kind of, well, I really consumer facing or like business facing. It's like, okay, like understand that taking the shortcut almost always has negative consequences that cost you money down the road. So
Or opportunity. Right now, opportunity cost is sometimes a larger cost than the money end of it. Especially if you're talking more personal items. And so that's the opportunity cost is huge. And I've, dealt with that as well. And so, it's just not fun at all. But thankfully, thanks to a lot of hard work, nose to the grindstone, building things, I was able to acquire another managed IT company, a little one-man show years ago. He actually came back on as a VCIO with us now, for clients, on an owner finance deal. So, wrote a check for 25 grand down and paid him out as a percentage of revenue over X number of years. And acquired a couple of other things along the way, and got lucky with some good networking and contacts, and worked hard, and was able to, I was just looking at some tax returns the other day, and went from, in 2020, about $2 million to 2023 $10 million. And so, pretty able to ramp that pretty well. And even that first 2 million was very difficult, took a lot of work, but once we hit that first 2 million, being able to use that to pay off those taxes, pay off those things, and then make those decisions, back in like 2021 or whatever, to close up the rest of retail was key, and it has allowed us to continue growing on the commercial B2B side, adding divisions, adding people, adding focuses, and being able to offer a kind of a full service solution now to our customers. And we're not even close to done. I mean, we just laid out some growth plans this year, and our goal is still 50 million by 2030. That was the goal I set in 2020, and we're on our way. Whether or not we're going to hit it there or not, we'll see. But definitely aggressively growing and aggressively going after expanding in the market, and delivering that top quality to our customers.
Yeah. I mean, the first part of being able to hit a target is to, speak it and think it into existence. The second part is actually putting actual steps and plans into place, which it sounds like you did. Obviously, you don't just make a jump from 2 million to 10 million without having strong plans and a strategy in place. So, it's easy to talk about something that, and it makes you feel good. And I think a lot of business owners get caught up in that dopamine dump of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And what they forget to do is they forget to write down action steps and write it down and put it in front of their face and plan for it. And that,
And I think a lot also are in for they want that instant reward. They want that. A lot of people, especially in more of the blue collar industries, you hit that million mark, or maybe even that 5, or heck, the 10, and it's real easy to just start pumping money into your personal accounts, or things running off, and that's fine if your goal is to, okay, I want to create a $10 million company, maximize profits, and let it ride.
Yep.
That's great if that's your plan, and if that's what you're going for. If your plan is to grow it much beyond that, then being able to sit back and say, okay, you know what, that 50 or 100,000 that I want to pay myself, that Rolex I want, that whatever I want, is a much better ROI to put back into the business, and do that other marketing campaign, or grow that over here, or hire that key position over there. Or, we brought on a fractional CFO, and, we're looking at some fractional CMOs, and things like that. And, making those investments back in, and making those cognizant choices of, look, I'm going to keep myself at that, 90K salary, or that 100K salary for an extra couple of years, because I want to be able to reinvest and build to hit what I want to hit. And it's not easy, because, especially for those of us who had a very hard, long road early on, when you could pay yourself more, you can, you want to. But I think it's also important to make those decisions. And I'm not saying to always put the business before family, put the family first, but like, there's a difference between, you know, chasing your goals and setting your decisions and your team seeing that, or, having every fancy newest toy in the book to do. And you can do that if that's your goal, if that's what you want to hit. But I think setting those goals and executing on them is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is actually kind of flowing by time wise. So the one last question I want to ask you is, through those years, obviously you've learned some lessons in business. I'm guessing also through that you've kind of developed in your personal way that you think about things and look at things. What has that journey looked like to you on the personal side, where you've maybe spent money on yourself to hire some coaches, to hire mentors, or just on books and all that kind of whatever it is. Like, what does that look like for you, and how has that been a key in helping you scale your business?
Yes, I mean, couple key takeaways on that. I wish I had probably dug into a lot more of the the books and podcasts and whatnot a lot sooner in my entrepreneurial journey. I read a lot more, I guess you might call like classic, books, accounting books, this, that, the other thing. I dropped out of college 2 years in because I was like, I'm going for IT and business, and it was super boring when I had an IT business and things weren't really, lining up. So I didn't gain a lot out of those college years, other than just the experience and some of the connections. But, books like, Find Your Why by Simon Sinek, that was actually one I just read last year. We were kinda going through some core mission, vision, core values, revamps, and really trying to dig in and figure those things out. But I'll be honest, like, what my why is today isn't probably what it would have been 5 years ago. So some of those things, they almost hit a lot better now, and I think probably the core takeaway there is like, don't stop learning, and it never hurts to cycle back around to some of those things. I'll see people recommending books, whether or not it's something from, Stuman or Cynic or anyone else. And it's really important to go back and sometimes even reread those things or read new ones, even if they're targeted at, the startup entrepreneur. Because a lot of times it's just eye-opening. The Ideal Team Player, we just went through that one again for like the third time. And really, as we revamp even just like hiring processes and some of our like core internal culture things, and then even me personally, just trying to shift in my brain the last 2 years from kind of like the in the field lead tech, leading the company from the front, if you will, to really shifting and being like, okay, now I need to have the right people in the right places, and kind of playing more of a director, CEO role. I'm still involved in too much day to day, but understanding where that's at and what's needing to happen. I guess just, don't stop learning. Keep digging into that. I do now. I'm in a couple different mastermind groups. I'm in EO Entrepreneurs Organization. It's a global organization primarily for 1 million and up. They have an accelerator program for smaller companies. But I highly recommend that one to anyone, especially if that fits them and they can make that monthly commitment. It's like 4 hours once a month.
Mm.
And it really creates some really good core relationships with people in other industries, because they don't put two people in the same industry in the same like pod. Um, I really recommend that, just from a understanding, be able to build those deeper relationships and have those open discussions when you're under NDA, and they're not going out of this room. That's really key. I'm in another industry specific one, security owners group. And that one is really good because it's owners from all over the country. We fly to each other's locations every quarter. One location hosts, like, being able to really dig in that industry. So I guess I would say, especially once you get to that point where you can invest, that 7, 10, 15 grand in a mastermind sort of group, those small groups that have the right people in them. I love EO for being a non-industry specific, getting people from all over, a lot of different knowledge. But then you get like a industry specific one, to really be able to share best practices. And, I can bring those questions of, hey, we've got this new contract or this new service program we're potentially offering, or hey, I've got this personal issue with this, to those groups and to those meetings, and they bring a ton of value. I love global industry groups as well. But let's face it, a lot of them are just, whose dick is bigger. Like, that's kind of
You're not wrong.
the vibe.
You're not wrong, man. Well, no, man, I really appreciate your time, and that's some really good feedback, that I think anybody can take and apply. Learning never stops, and anybody that
Really do.
thinks they know everything, are usually the people that fail either the furthest or never got started to begin with. Some of the wealthiest people that I've ever met are some of the most inquisitive and questioning people that I've ever met, because there's always something new to learn from, anybody. So I think anybody's worth at least a 2-minute conversation for you to at least glean and take something away from them. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing some insight. There's so many valuable little tidbits that you drop for people that are listening that are probably going through similar things that you had. And hopefully we'll get some guidance as to how to avoid that stuff in the future, so that they don't have to hopefully suffer for as many years. Right. That's the goal of it.
Right? Hey, perseverance and a lot of hard work, can get you there. And for me, being able to provide for my people and take care of those employees and see that growth for them is just huge. And I wouldn't really trade it for the world. So I really appreciate, having me on and everything you're doing for business finance and, opening so many eyes on that front is huge. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man.